I want to start by saying that Heritage Bay has never before had to deal with reducing an amenity for another amenity. So it's a very important thing, and I'm glad to see so many people here. What's been going on with tennis and pickleball? And if you can see it, it's been a struggle. Today, what we're going to do, we're going to start off with a discussion of what tennis is and what pickleball is for those that don't know. We were going to have some expert come in here and talk about it, but we thought Matt would do a better job. So today, Matt's going to be doing that. I had met with a couple of people that were involved in the original installation of the 2 pickleball courts that we do have. So I'm going to review a little bit about what stories they told me. I'll then review some of the information that came out of the ad hoc committee. Matt will talk about the presentation of scope of work, cost, what the courts would look like. And then the most important part is for us to get some feedback and comments from the membership. So Matt, since I started, you can.
Good afternoon again, everyone. As Mr. Dubas just mentioned, we were actually the outside consultant to cancel at the last minute, so we didn't plan for me to do this, but here we are. This segment was meant to give an explanation of how sports programs, tennis and pickleball, are both included in this, and how outside or league play can bolster or enhance the program in communities. Tennis and pickleball both thrive with league programs. These sports need league play to have a successful court program, as it brings in dollars for food and beverage within the club, as well as dollars for the particular sport, as revenue seen for lessons, equipment, and such. And that came straight from Trish DiPaolo, which is one of the consultants we discussed this subject with. And this goes for tennis and pickleball. Outside league play for both tennis and pickleball enhance the program to add a competitive component for those members that enjoy a higher level of play. Racket sports are unlike other sport amenities in a community, such as golf, because parity is needed in regard to level of play to make the match enjoyable for the membership. Members can still have an enjoyable experience playing a round of golf with an individual with a higher handicap, and that's how it differs from other sport amenities. You can get into the cart with somebody with a high handicap and you're a scratch golfer, and you can still have an enjoyable round of golf. Maybe not enjoy.
And I'm not the scratch one.
That's it for that segment.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so a little bit about the history of pickleball. It really started happening around here in 2011. People were playing. What I thought was interesting is when they started playing on a tennis court, and that was kind of yucky because it's a softer surface and they had to use different balls. It wasn't really good for them. So they went to the parking lot. They were playing in the employee lot over by the entrance. It was angled, there's drains, that kind of stuff didn't work either, but they played. They had an engineer come in 2015. They really started putting pencil to paper and it was 2016 that they actually completed the 2 pickleball courts that were there. So from 2016 until today, it's been a growing sport, more and more people wanting to get court time. Up until the sports committee, that they did a survey. And I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself, but for the original courts, this is just some highlights, they couldn't identify green space. And we're going to talk about some of the difficulties of finding space for pickleball courts when I go over the ad hoc committee's report. There was some opposition about the cost of pickleball, but yet 2 courts were built, and the money was found to do that. As a result of another sports committee survey, the ad hoc committee was put together. And I think a lot of that was, and I'm going to preface this by saying, the current board of directors at Heritage Bay is trying to remain neutral on the issue of tennis versus pickleball. And it's why we're coming to the membership as a board to make that decision. We believe it's so important that the membership should make this decision. And again, today is to give you guys a little bit of understanding of what you're voting on. So I'm gonna quickly go through the ad hoc committee. I'll show you the slides that I did my report to the board, but I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. We had some what were called boundaries, and one was that the courts should be facing north-south. If you're playing tennis or pickleball, conventional wisdom says the court should be north-south. We have one that's north-south now and one that's east-west, and they get equal amounts of time, maybe even the east-west a little bit more time because it has some shade. But one of the requirements was to try and keep a north-south orientation. We were going to try and identify green space, and that was real interesting at Heritage Bay. We don't have any. We certainly don't have enough to build courts. There was an option to take away from the golf course. So, for example, well, you're laughing, but one of the options was to, for example, go to Pine 9, turn it into a par 3, have that be a par 35. You have a ton of extra space. You can build whatever you want. One of the reasons that Heritage Bay is having a problem with green space is we're fortunate enough to have 27 holes of golf instead of 18. And so taking away from one hole was an option that was considered. Another option was to take away from tennis. I guess we're here because of that. And the last thing was to do nothing. And we didn't think as an ad hoc committee that was an option either, because there were just so many people that were interested in playing pickleball. So I don't know, I was new on the board, and I guess they decided I'd be the guy that they were going to hang in the tree, and there I am. But I got to tell you, we had some very interesting conversations. We had some very knowledgeable people on the committee. We had 2 people representing each of the racket sports. So Don Flatt and Joe Connors were representing pickleball, Kathy Fish and Phil Ludwig were supporting tennis. We had the chair of the Sports Advisory Committee, Terry McKay. We had a real pain in the neck, the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee, my brother Mike. And Michelle was around for part-time. So we consulted with Mike Herrera from Grady Minor. He was a good choice, I think, because he was the engineer that was involved with the HBEP. He really understood our community. He understood our layout. He understood the pluses and minuses of our campus. So we met 6 times. There was a lot of energy, and I bought stock in Band-Aids once we started getting going. But we had a very difficult time coming to consensus. Tennis people really believed that taking away a tennis court and adding pickleball would detract from their program, and the pickleball people felt very strongly that they needed more courts to have a good program at Heritage Bay. So with the Mike Herrera stuff. And I'm not going to go into the actual proposals, but there were 4 options. We did determine that there was no green space. And there are people that say, gee, what about the parking lot up by the main gate? There's a parking lot up there. You can put pickleball courts there, except that's owned by the Heritage Bay CDD. It's not part of the Heritage Bay Master Association property. Oh, over by the terraces, like where you go from Pine 3 to Pine 4, we had a barbecue over there. Put pickleball courts over there, except it's owned by the Quarry CDD. But then there's all this land between where you're going to Pine 6 from Pine 5 and you're passing the terraces. Well, the parking lots in that land belong to the terraces. They don't belong to Heritage Bay. And I could just go on and on and on with all the spots that we found that we just didn't own and couldn't use. So there was really no green space at Heritage Bay to solve the problem. This was one of the options where Grady Minor suggested, I think it was 3 pickleball courts that we were going to put in front of the entrance to the Wellness Center, between the Wellness Center and the tennis courts, and close off that part of the parking lot. $300,000 just for the site work. And that was 3 courts. Are these slides going to be available on the thing? Okay, so I'm not going to go into taking a lot of time today reviewing these. You could certainly look at the pros and cons of each, but I'll highlight some. The noise from pickleball, the tennis people felt that would be a problem. Keeping the courts together was a good thing. The cabana deliveries would be impacted if you put courts in the parking lot. I don't know if you guys ever try and use the bag drop when Cheney Brothers is there delivering. It's very difficult now. So imagine taking that ability to drive around out of there. It would be very difficult. So those are some of the cons, and plus it's costly. Option 2 was to take a tennis court and make 4 pickleball courts on it. Well, this is the one we're actually talking about in the resolution. And we're not saying which tennis court to take, but you can fit 4 pickleball courts on a tennis court. Well, that's what they tell us. It may or may not be true. I'm going to tell you that today we're going to be hearing from a lot of people. And some of the things you hear might be true and they might not be, but we're being told that you can put 4 pickleball courts on a tennis court. Oh, that's not the one to take court 5? I can't read backwards. But okay, so it's the same thing as the other one, except there would be 4 of them. There was another option to build a tennis court in the parking lot and make 4 pickleball courts on the tennis courts. And there it is. Okay. But I think one of the things that is really interesting to look at here is if you take 4 pickleball courts and leave tennis with 6 instead of 7 courts, the cost is substantially less than any of the other options. And certainly people having to vote and to have an assessment, with a large assessment, it's likely that that would not pass. So it was difficult to accept. This one is where we're coming up with this $150 assessment, which is very different than if you had to build in the parking lot. And the other caveat to that is when you build in the parking lot and you use up parking spaces, you have to build new parking spaces to make up for the ones you lost. That's by county requirement, not by a Heritage Bay requirement, but it's the building code. So building new parking spots that don't exist now is very, very expensive. And those are the pros and cons of that one. And then, of course, the last one is to just leave the two courts the way they are. And, you know, a lot of people are playing pickleball outside of the community here. They go to county parks and they're not playing here because they just can't. So just real quick, the committee really couldn't reach consensus on one particular option. We went back to the board and said, this is just too difficult to come up with an option that works. We don't have space. We needed to keep the cost down. So it was really a difficult thing. And we went back to the board as a committee and said, we need to look at continuing the analysis and seeing usage and see how the program grows over time. And it was disappointing, but we just couldn't agree on one particular option to keep. I'll turn it over to you for now. You need this? I'm good. You need that too? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dubester. And thank you for all your hard work on the ad hoc committee and preparing for this town hall and the whole process leading here. It's not easy, and you don't get paid. So thank you very much. I'm just gonna start with the presentation, scope of work, and detailed construction costs. I received quotes from all of the companies listed here, Richmond Courts, LLC, for the actual court construction and demo of the old Hartrue court and construction of the 4 pickleball courts in its place. The principal of Richmond Courts is the actual builder that built the court 5 and court 6, those 2 tennis courts. They know where all the irrigation lines run, and they have a good history at Heritage Bay of knowledge and historical data of where their all the irrigation lines are and how it was constructed. Michael Herrera of Grady Minor, as Mr. Bester mentioned earlier, he's been part of this process and gave us all of our engineered drawings and also gave it an estimated cost of work for all of the permitting, engineered drawings, demo, paving and grading, landscaping, and any paver work and or sidewalk repair or paver work or any utilities that would have to be reoriented. Also received a quote from Acoustablock Inc., the maker of Acoustafence, which is the sound dampening material that would be used on the pickleball courts. We currently have them. They have not been installed, but they'll be installed. They're being installed today and tomorrow, and they'll be completely up tomorrow to where they block the sound for or dampen the sound from the pickleball courts. Accurate Pavers also gave us a quote in the case we need to add pavers or re-level pavers due to construction. The scope of work to permanently convert 1 Hartrue tennis court into 4 pickleball courts. The site work, the existing court will be excavated to reach 7.5 inches deep and regraded to the proper slope. The existing California corner will be converted into a square corner. Contractor shall grade the area where the pickleball courts are to be located. The site to slope in a single plane in one direction, east to west, towards the sidewalk. And you can see the grade there that they would grade it to, and so that's the way it drains to the edges of the courts, to the side drains. The constructed courts shall have a profile 7.5 inches upon completion. The court shall be constructed of 6 inches of base rock, compacted, and 1.5 inches of virgin 59 asphalt. Net post footers shall be positioned according to the ASBA standards for pickleball courts. No bird baths. Bird baths are the little dips or divots. You can see them on our pickleball courts, or the old, before they were resurfaced. A bird bath that's past the limitations will hold water for an extended period of time. These, they guarantee that no bird bath shall exist more than a thickness of a nickel in depth and be dry after 1 hour, after an hour after it rains in 70-degree or greater weather. The court surface, after the asphalt properly cures, overlay fiberglass will be applied on the surface. The surface shall be coated with Nova acrylic tennis court surface. The 4-coat system, including 2 coats of fortified acrylic resurface, followed by 2 coats or 2 tones chosen by the owner. After the surface is done, 2-inch white lines will be applied for proper pickleball play. And you can see the layout. Nathan, can you minimize the zoom? And that's the dimensions of the court. They are the minimum dimensions. 30 by 60 is the minimum for regulation pickleball. And 4 of those can fit where an existing tennis court is now. For fencing, all perimeter fencing will be 10 feet tall, whether it needs to be added or we reuse existing fence. A divider fencing will be installed between the 2 north and 2 south pickleball fences. This fencing is to be 6 feet tall. The divider between the east and west courts shall be 4 feet tall. There will be a 4-foot wide gate installed on each court for access. So you'll be able to get into each court, whether there's a match going on or not. Grady Minor, this is the engineer's opinion probable scope of site infrastructure and what he bases costs on. Paving and grading, landscaping and irrigation, site plan review and inspection, design and permitting, site design plan amendment, which would have to be applied for at the county. And then we would have to apply for an application for parking reduction. When you add more courts or more amenities, we're going to be taking away 1 tennis court, but we're adding 4 pickleball courts. So we're essentially adding 3 additional courts. You do require more parking spaces according to the county. It's in a range of 6 to 7 more spaces. Right now, we have already reduced our parking by 14% due to the HBEP, and we had to apply for a parking reduction during that process. We increased our square footage, the amount of seats that we have in our restaurants for both areas. And the 3 bocce ball courts, believe it or not, required parking spaces, as a parking space requirement. So we already have a 14% parking reduction in place currently, but we would have to apply for one because we're not, in this plan, there is no additional parking planned for construction. And as I said, Accurate Pavers gave us a quote for paver installation and releveling, and the quote for Acoustifence sound dampening panels. It's a quote for 360 feet of linear fence, and they're 10 feet tall. So they go from the top to the bottom, and it's 62 panels in total. And there's a disclaimer Acoustifence has right on the proposal. Acoustifence outdoor noise is only capable of being reduced. It is impossible to totally stop. Your noise reduction is relevant to many variables. Surrounding noise reflecting objects like reflecting off objects like buildings or trees, elevations of listeners versus noise source, noise frequencies, wind, or the height of the Acoustifence noise barrier. And there's just this is the summary of construction cost. There is a 20% contingency built into this project. And you arrive at the total of $187,202. The annual membership meeting date and upcoming vote on February 22nd, ballots will be mailed out and electronic voting will begin on the 22nd. So those of you who aren't signed up for electronic voting and would like to, make sure you do so. Those who still receive a physical ballot in the mail, Those will be mailed out on the 22nd. March 23rd is the date of the annual meeting, and votes will be tallied and announced at the annual meeting of the membership. Make sure you are fully informed and ready to make your voice heard. Your voice affects the future of your club. This is essentially a vote to make an unprecedented decision that we've never made here at the club, and that's why it's gone to a membership vote. We're essentially voting to take away from one amenity to give or expand another amenity. We've never done that here. That's essentially what this vote is for. It's not the money, it's for that reason. So make sure your vote matters and make sure you get out there and vote so it counts. In addition to these town halls, the club will provide information through the voting period via the court's vote page. It's a tab on the Heritage Bay website, which will be live on Friday. Be sure to check this page for official club frequently asked questions. You can find the frequently asked questions developed by management with all the information you heard today and some other questions that will be asked today that we would probably, if they're routinely being asked, we'll put those on our frequently asked questions, and those will be available. Video recording of the town hall today and the one on Friday, and all other relevant information. And if you can't find what you're looking for, just let us know through the convenient online portal, and we'll direct you to where you can find the information on the website. And now that brings us to the fun part. Member question and comment forum. I just want to say this first, Heritage Bay is among the leading Bono golf communities in Southwest Florida. I believe the main factor that makes Heritage Bay stand out is their membership. They create a warm and welcoming environment and truly care about their community and neighbors. I truly believe that. Makes this neighborhood great. In that regard, we ask that during this forum, we treat each other with respect and abide by the following parameters. Abide by the 3-minute time limit so that everyone who wishes to speak has an opportunity. In a second, Nathan and Catherine will be standing up in your areas. They'll have a microphone. And if you wish to speak, if you want to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll call on you individually. And they will have the microphone available for you. Yeah, but they will keep a hold of the microphone. There's a 3-minute time period for you to speak. And once that 3 minutes is up, I would ask that you please politely sit down. And then once we go through everyone and everyone's able to ask a question, if you'd still like to make a comment or ask a question, you would be able to do so. We want everyone to be heard. Therefore, we're gonna put that 3-minute time period on there. But again, after everybody goes, you'll be able to ask or make a comment afterwards. And I ask that you please do not talk while somebody else's turn is underway. Thank you very much. And with that, is Catherine in the room? There she is. Go ahead.
Matt, I just have a question.
Could you please state your name?
Kim Bollinger. I just have a question about the parking, because you said parking enhancement or adding more spots is not included in this. I guess I have 2 questions. Are there places where we could add more parking? And if so, why not go ahead and include that in this, in what we're voting on as well?
There are places we could add more parking. We actually have engineered drawings from Grady Minor in those locations. To do so would significantly add cost to this project.
Okay.
You want to go over there?
Yeah. Ready? Go.
I'm surprised there's not more arms up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Counters. I live over in Gator Bay Court. But I'm really talking about, I was so excited to hear that Here we go. I think this is a great deal. And why I think there's so many benefits from this vote. If you look at the outside, pickleball is exploding. I was just looking at some statistics from the Sports and Fitness Association. Pickleball is the #1 sport growing in the last 2 years, over 40%. There's 4.8 million players playing today. It's so big, they're having a tournament in the Flushing Meadow this year at the US Open Tennis Tournament. So it's really exploding nationwide. I think everybody, I live in Connecticut, split time here and there. We're building courts in Connecticut at my club. So it's happening all over. It's so exciting. So I'm excited to see that the board brought this to help allow us to vote on this. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great sport. It has everything: small court, small ball, small racket, great for us senior people, great for our kids coming up from wherever they're coming from, great for the grandkids, great entertainment, especially when they stay here too long. So I think it would be a real enhancement. And not only, probably the biggest thing about pickleball for everyone to know, it's a very social, easy to start game, a lot of fun. We had a little clinic this weekend, started by Anita Bava. We had 25 people come out. They all had a lot of fun. We had 20 representatives. We were all huddled on these 2 courts, but we just had a lot of fun. So, very easy to pick up, a lot of fun, but it also can be competitive. I've seen a lot of people transition from other sports, tennis, racquetball, squash, and do it at a very high competitive level. So both social, fun, easy to get to, very competitive, a lot of fun. So I think it's a great opportunity for us all. The benefits are enormous. And quite frankly, I think if you look at what we have today, we have 27 holes. We have this great dining facility that we've all invested in. We have bocce courts. We have a great tennis program. So this is just one more enhancement with pickleball court that really puts us over the top. We'll be far and away better than any community in Southwest Florida or even Florida, with what we have. So I'd encourage you to vote, think of what I said, but really, don't lose this opportunity. Get in the swing, vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
He's gonna call.
Over here, Nathan. Catherine, did you have somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Bob Lothrop. I'm in Veranda 2, and I'm an avid tennis player. I said this before at the last meeting, and I would urge everybody to vote for this concept because I think the common good will be better served taking away the 1 court and adding 4 more pickleball courts. And the reason why I believe that is because I think a little bit of effort in scheduling tennis on the peak times from about January 15 to March 15, we could certainly get along with each other with play. It might be a little more difficult to get on a tennis court, but as daylight savings time starts rolling around, we could start earlier and we wouldn't have the difficulty of getting on the tennis on 1 fewer tennis court. And we could certainly go later in the morning and afternoon to play. In the summertime, it's not even an issue because there's the vacancy rate down here. All the snowbirds are gone. You can get on any court you want. You're looking for court. You're looking for tennis. You're looking for pickleball. I shouldn't say that. I don't know about that one, but I think it's the common good would be served, and it's certainly not a perfect decision, but it's certainly perfectly adequate for both of us to get along with each other and have the increase in pickleball courts and just one court taken away. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Charlie Kessler. I've been a member here at Heritage Bay for 4 years. My memory's not great, so I have to write things down. And so I played pickleball. I was introduced to it 4 years ago when I moved here. It's exciting. I'm glad we're considering expanding it at Heritage Bay. I had heard when we moved here, we had a great tennis program, tennis league program. Obviously, you can see that by the banners around the courts, et cetera, et cetera. So I was concerned that it might influence or affect the tennis players, fearful that their tennis leagues might be impacted. So I, with several other folks, did some research and found and discovered some detail analysis that will not impact them. Today, there are 19 league teams at Heritage Bay. Most of the leagues play in the afternoon and only use up to 4 courts. Again, not a big issue with one less court. Most of the other communities participating in these leagues have 5 or 6 courts, which shows we'd continue to fit in. A large percentage of the players on the teams, the league teams, are not Heritage Bay members. There's one tournament held 3 times a year that's comprised of about 90% outside members, and they do use all 7 courts. This can be adjusted by some minor rescheduling, as we do now for the pickleball leagues, because we have 3 teams and only 2 courts. Here are some details. The USTA team, 8 teams, 103 people, 77 of those people are not Heritage Bay members. And of course, we all know what we pay on our annual fees, $7,000. There are 77 not Heritage Bay members. I believe league fees are around $10 to $30. Every one of those non-members coming in has got to park somewhere. The source for that is the USTA website. There's a CTA league, 5 teams, 66 people. 24 of those people are not Heritage Bay members. The league fees for this are $20. Again, some parking spots being taken. That source is the CTA website. This last one, I'm going to need a little bit of help, but there's a CCWTA, 6 teams, 48 people. The details on this website are not as specific as the others, but if the outside non-members are at the same high percentage as the 2 other leagues, there are a lot of non-members. The league fee for this is $20. 3 of these leagues at CCWTA play from 8:30 to 12:30, prime time for parking spots. If anyone plays, and here's where I need help, if anyone plays on the CCWTA, can give me more detail, I'd love it and appreciate it, so I can make sure this is all correct, because I can't get it off their website. So basically, the tennis league play, which again, we're very proud of here at Heritage Bay, because we've got a lot of banners, a lot of winning. That utilizes 25% of the tennis court time. So I'd be pleased to repurpose 1 tennis court and add 200% increase in pickleball and have no impact on the tennis amenity leagues. Thank you.
I think we're, Matt, we're going side to side.
Correct. Catherine.
Oh, okay. My name is Susan Rudy. My husband and I have lived in Heritage Bay since 2008. When we decided to move to a larger condo last year, we never considered moving to another community because of our friends and neighbors. That's what kept us here. But another extremely important reason for staying in Heritage Bay is the opportunity to stay active. I'm an avid golfer. I take advantage of the fitness center and the fitness classes. I swim laps. And 4 years ago, I started playing pickleball. And the beauty is I don't have to drive in Naples traffic for 30 minutes to do these activities. I either walk or ride my bike to all of the above. When it was determined that the viable option for pickleball courts was to repurpose 1 tennis court into 4 pickleball courts, I had a couple of friends who do not play either tennis or pickleball say they needed to see the hard data before making a decision on the conversion. So every night from the tennis bookings website, I would count how many were playing tennis each day. I would then determine who was a resident, or if they were a resident or non-resident of Heritage Bay. I did not include league play. My intent was to focus on Heritage Bay members exclusively. I have the screenshots from the tennis bookings website in a folder in order to validate my numbers. I would be happy to share this data with anybody. To make my point and to be concise, since I cannot display the chart with this information, I have averaged the number playing during the 15-day period between January 24th and February 7th. For tennis, members, which includes renters also, The average was 42 people playing each day. Now, some of those days were cold, so that's why the number is probably a little lower than you would think. Now they were playing on 2 courts. For pickleball, those playing and also on the wait list, the number is 58. So we have 42 resident tennis players on 7 courts compared to 58 pickleball players on 2 courts. These numbers emphasize the fact that 6 courts is more than sufficient for our tennis program. Conversely, 2 pickleball courts make it extremely difficult and frustrating for those wanting to play pickleball. There is some speculation that certain few people play a lot of pickleball. Yes, some people are more avid players than others, but this is also very much the case with tennis also. Make no mistake, there are a lot of different people playing every day that add up to these numbers, not the same people. And again, I have copies of the signups to validate this data. As I already said, in addition to the people playing each day, I have a list of residents and non-residents playing. I think that makes a difference because decisions should be made on the premise of benefiting the members, not those outside tennis memberships. That makes me circle back to my first paragraph. Outside tennis members and leagues take up much coveted parking. The majority of pickleball players either walk or ride their bicycles. This goes back to the question about parking. Okay, I think I am done. I am hoping that this is win-win when you consider how many people play tennis each day and pickleball. If there were more courts, the population would explode for pickleball play as it is exploding everywhere. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Steve Janick. I'm an avid tennis player, lifelong tennis player. I have a career of being a land developer. I built 2 active adult communities. I'm familiar with the land planning process. One of the problems with, one of the real questions I have with this is everyone keeps saying 6 pickleball courts. I question the need for 6 pickleball courts at this time. I think that I think it would be half the price if we built 2 more than 4 right now. You could probably build 2 more courts around the tennis facility right now. And I would argue with the management that I believe there's other places in the community that you could put 3 more. One of the places I've never heard anyone say, and I've investigated this as a land developer, one of the places that wasn't mentioned is by Cypress 17, the maintenance facility. There's a parking lot. There's room, there's plenty of room. It's never been looked at seriously to put more pickleball courts there. Pickleball courts should be in a remote area. You see Esplanade built their pickleball courts away from most of the facility. Esplanade, as a matter of fact, is a community near this size, newer community that has 4 pickleball courts. They put a remote because pickleball is very loud. It affects the houses on Gator Bay. If you put 4 more around the tennis courts, it's going to be a lot more noise around Gator Bay. And even the residents of Escambia can hear the pickleball from that area. I argue the 6 courts, there's no real study that I see. There's some polls, there's some surveys, but as a developer, the way you determine how much pickleball you need is basically to copy other communities. There's communities like Esplanade, as I said, they have 4 pickleball. There's Vanderbilt has no pickleball. As a matter of fact, the pickleball community tried to put a pickleball on the tennis court and it was voted down. Quail West has 8 tennis courts and 4 pickleball. It's a large community. They had room for pickleball there to build. We do not have room for pickleball. Palmyra, 4 pickleball. Stonebridge, no pickleball. Strand, huge tennis committee. It's huge tennis community with 8 tennis courts and just 3 pickleball. They took a basketball court and repurposed it into pickleball. I'm not against more pickleball. If the golfers mainly wanted to vote for pickleball, let's try 1 court. Let's try 2 courts. See, that would be double what we have now. let's see that enough. I don't see a strong need to rip up an amenity we have for the people like me who bought in this community to get a pickleball league. 4 should be plenty. If you want a remote area as a phase 2, go in that remote area, such as the maintenance facility. I'd yet to hear why we can't build pickleball courts in the maintenance facility and keep this remote, keep it away from the people, keep the noise down, and there's parking there that would solve the parking problem. Thank you.
Joan Albarelli. Oh, I can hold it. Joan Albarelli. Gary Grant was tasked with, at the last board meeting, tried to present a report that he was tasked with on the pros and cons or whatever of pickleball versus tennis. And he was rudely interrupted and never got to finish presenting the report. Is there a way for it to be made public to us so that maybe we could make a more intelligent decision on this?
As it was not part of the agenda, as I understand it, that it's not going to be part of any board materials published.
So there's no way for us to see this after he did all this work?
He's in this room, you can ask him.
Okay, thank you. We're going back and forth from side to side.
My name is Julie Lenhart, and I'm concerned about the costs of this project. The assessment cost is $150. That's what they're telling us. I think there's a lot more involved than that. This involves just the installation of the court and the sound mitigation panels. We've only gotten one bid from one contractor for the installation. That same installer installed our other 2 pickleball courts. They went 41% over budget. We have a 20% contingency plan. How this bid is from 2021. We've got inflation now. Will this increase it as well? When asked, the management said that this will be absorbed by our budget if we go over budget. That comes out of our dues. The budget is our dues and our revenue. That's where it's coming from. When we talk about costs of adding pickleball courts, in the ad hoc committee, we got a sheet from June 1st, 2021, a spreadsheet from management that said that they predict that we would have $144,000 of annual recurring costs. That includes $97,000 in operating costs for a pickleball pro salary and the maintenance that would be involved. These screens that they've talked about putting up, they're not up now because it took 4 months for them to get refurbished after they were damaged by wind. The club policy is that these screens will not be up from November 1st, or excuse me, from May 1st to November 1st. What are the people on Gator Bay supposed to do for those 6 months with no noise abatement whatsoever? We can hear that at Escambia. We can hear it at our new community pool. We just spent all this money on a beautiful HBEP project. Does anybody want to listen to that while they're trying to relax at the pool? Not me. So if that is part of our, is that part of our budget? I mean, where's the, we also have the issue of the reserve fund contribution.
What I just presented is just a construction cost.
Right. So
will there be an operational cost increase? Yeah. Yes, there will.
Okay. And
with any expansion, much like the HBEP, but not to the degree of the HBEP, of an operational budget increase. So you will have an increase when you expand any amenity.
So, and if we vote the project down, this will not be then in our budget, correct?
We would, it would be our existing program as it exists today.
Right.
And there will be just the regular.
So these will be costs that we will incur as a membership, but they're not included in the construction.
Yeah, as I said, if you expand any amenity here,
right,
there is added cost to that, whether it's maintenance, whether it's staff, or you know, if you need to reserve more for that in the future, those numbers will go up.
So the decreased revenue from the tennis program brought in $94,000 last year. During COVID, $94,000. Pickleball brought in just over $2,000. So we're looking at losing a lot of revenue when you take away prime time for lessons, for use of the ball machine, and also for tournaments that will not come. They will find other places to come if we put 4 pickleball courts smack in the middle of our center. We don't know which court they're going to use. There's so much information we don't have that we're trying to do this vote without giving the members the information. We don't even know which court you're going to take. I mean, I think if you have to have any kind of input, okay, we don't know what they're going to look like. These abatement screens are not going to be up half the year. I think all these things we really need to look at before we vote.
You can make comments after everyone goes if you wish to continue.
We'll go left, right, left, right.
Okay. I'll touch you. Okay. My name's Ed Bollinger. My name is Ed Bollinger. My wife and I have lived here for 8 years on Escampi in a house. I play tennis, and I really like to see pickleball put somewhere in a proper spot. Things that have not been talked about is, 1, you're taking away an amenity. That can become a legal issue. 2, the noise level and the dBA on that road across is going to be, the noise level on that street where the court's going to be put is going to be so high, that'll become another legal issue. Okay, then we need parking. You got to drive around to find a parking place in season the way it is. That's not even the main point. $150 is pocket change for everybody sitting in here. Wait till we start having all these individuals file lawsuits against the club, because an attorney, I hope there's not many in here, will take the fee and apply the lawsuit to the club. We will all be paying that for a long time, and it won't be $150 because you can sue anybody for anything. I just want to throw that out there because we talked about everything else except what would happen if we go in the wrong direction. And the fellow in the back that talked about the maintenance putting in pickleball, that is an ideal place. I went back there and measured it myself, right behind the sand dunes. There's plenty of room. The noise can be put out towards the woods, and we can put in parking, utilities, and it'll be a perfect place. But we can't afford having major lawsuits in this club. This is supposed to be a fun time of our life, not to be aggravated and be separated. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Chris Ritchie. I'm in Terrace 21, and I don't know if this is time for a group hug or not. I'm a lifelong tennis player from a family of tennis players. 2 of my sisters are way better than me, but we all played tennis for decades. But after being introduced to pickleball a few years ago, I fell in love with it. And I've even gotten my tennis playing sisters hooked on it, which didn't take too much effort. It's, as Joe said, it's a great social game that can be played at all levels. You yourself, I myself can play at all levels, even in an hour span. But you can see why the game is growing so fast across the country and here in Florida. My wife and I became members at Heritage Bay last winter and have made many great friends playing pickleball. I'm also captain of one of our new teams. We're 4-1, by the way. You should come see us play. The guys on our team love the competition and the camaraderie. We enjoy visiting other Naples communities and showing off our own here. My sister Lee and her husband visited Heritage Bay last month, and they loved it here, but they said they couldn't imagine buying here because we only have 2 courts. The other pickleball teams that come visit here say the same thing. Some of our grandkids were here before January and had a great time. And when they're older, we'd love to take them to play pickleball if there's courts available, but right now there's hardly any time. As a tennis fanatic who's been to Wimbledon and the French Open, fortunately, I can say pickleball is my new passion. After a shaky day on the golf course, which is par for the course, or when the tee sheet is booked, which is very par for the course, I love to play pickleball, but it's getting harder and harder to get on. It's a great amenity, not just for members, but for kids and grandkids. This small one-time investment will definitely pay big dividends for all of us. So today is actually a microcosm. If you look at the tennis court today, my good friends on in the tennis community, there's 1 out of the 7 courts that wasn't booked for 1 minute for the entire day. And there was plenty of time for leagues, clinics, personal lessons, personal use of the ball machine. So what we're asking for is to take one small portion of the tennis capacity and turn it into more pickleball courts. As far as parking, I'll just say the vast majority of the people that I know that play walk, bike, or carpool. So I don't think parking is really that big of an issue. In summary, I strongly support the courts for pickleball, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Dave Schober, Gator Bay Court, new resident, bought a home on Gator Bay last March, so less than a year ago. And when I pull into the driveway, I said, well, they're playing pickleball. I can hear them. I can hear those 2 courts. I can't imagine what 6 courts would sound like. It would be bad. It would be real bad. It'd be a problem. And certainly a terrible precedent. We mentioned that's why we're having this meeting, because we've never taken away from one amenity before. So in the future, would there be no meetings? They would just do it. You know, how many satellite pools do we need? But I agree that there should be some more courts. I'm really shocked that, how do we go from 2 to 6? I would love to see the plan for adding 1. I think there's room right there for 1. How about 2? What would 4 look like? What about 5? I mean, why are we just sitting here like we're mailing out a voting vote on 6? What happened to 3 and 4 and 5 and those costs? And there's going to be a problem. It's going to be loud. It's loud at Gator Bay. I can hear the 2 courts now. So I'm really dreading the idea of 6 of them there and taking away a tennis court. It's shocking to take away an amenity for another amenity. It's just shocking. The tennis courts were booked all day today up till 1 or 2 o'clock. They were completely full, and then in the evening as well. So I don't know what that was about. That comment was about. So I'm a no voter. I'm voting yes for more pickleball courts, but not taking away an amenity. Terrible precedent. Legal problems for sure. And I like the maintenance areas that should be considered. I'm just shocked that somehow we're voting on one option at this point. Let's take our time. What's the rush here? Let's don't take on. And the board's supposed to be neutral, so the board should be pro pickleball and pro tennis. And let's find some options that everybody can support. So let's see a plan for 1 court and 2 courts and 3 courts and 4 courts, so we can make an educated choice. This really isn't a choice. I feel like getting stuck down our throats here, and we should take our time and have some more options. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ian Murray. I live in Gator Bay. I'm a tennis player and a golfer. I'd like to talk first about, well, what happens to the tennis program, and the assumption has been made. The assumption has been made that there is no impact to the tennis program. Well, the reality is we just don't know. There's too much uncertainty about this proposal. Why? No decision's been made on where the courts are going to be constructed. The proposal is to construct on court 5. So if that takes place, what happens is that the existing canopy, seating, water fountain that sits presently between court 5 and court 6 is taken out, and it's replaced by a 10-foot wall. So what does that mean for court 6? We lose court 5. What about court 6? We don't know, but we reckon it's going to be extremely difficult for that court to be effectively used for regular tennis play. We can certainly use it for the tennis ball machine, but where do you put your gear? Where do you sit between games? This should have been addressed as part of the proposal process, and it's really bad that we don't have such information sorted out. Let's talk about usage for a sec. And my wife is a pickleball player, so I got to be a little bit careful here. The club uses tennisbookings.com for all tennis and pickleball registration. It's a reservation system. It doesn't manage demand. It doesn't manage who actually uses the courts. It doesn't place any limits on how often you can play. Unlike the Chelsea system used for golf and hated by us all when we can't get a frickin' tea time. Why is this important in the context of this proposal? Well, you've seen in some of the materials the usage data that's been published. We took a snapshot of pickleball court usage for the period January 14th to February 8th. 5 pickleball players used 13% of the reserve times. Said again, in a community of 1,250 homeowners, 13% of the reserve times were by 5 members. If we vote yes to this proposal, we're voting for the homeowners to pay for unlimited access to pickleball courts with no attempt to manage demand, justified using data that's significantly skewed by a minority of homeowners and transfer members playing multiple times, often on the same day. We have very great concern. We're not against pickleball expansion. We're very sympathetic to that. But to echo Dave's comments and Steve's comments, we don't know where the 6 courts come from. And certainly there's been no effective mechanism of measuring usage and measuring the demand. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Sherdock. As other people have the same sentiment, I'm going to slightly repeat it. I'm very concerned about the process. Process is critical. And what Heritage Bay doesn't have is a written, documented, approved procedure for eliminating an amenity or reducing an amenity. That lack of a process invites litigation. Litigation will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I can say this, why? Because I had such a case. And it went on for over 5 years in a community. So I would ask, it's too late, but to vote no and direct the board to come up with a written enforceable procedure so that we don't have unnecessary litigation expenses. Putting that aside, the proposal, as I understand it, is based upon an assumption that the county will not require additional parking spaces. My question is, what happens if the membership votes to put in the pickleball courts and the county comes back and says, you need to add X parking spaces? Where does that money come from? What happens? If someone could answer that, that would be helpful.
We are going, as I said in my presentation, we are going to apply for a parking reduction application.
I understand.
And Collier County allows up to a 20% reduction. We're at 14% now. It'll bring us closer. It'll bring us close to 18% if we are to be approved for this application. The application costs money, and we're using an engineer to facilitate the process. There is no additional funds in the project to offset parking if it is required to build.
Okay, and do we have an estimate of what that parking cost would be if the county were not to approve the application?
Yes, we do.
And what is that, please?
It depends on where we build it, but it's some of the costs were in the presentation on some of the options that were considered for during the ad hoc process. They reviewed 4 different site plans with parking in different areas. $300,000 was an estimate for parking in front of the tennis center because you have to reorient storm drainage and utilities. So it is expensive. That was the least expensive option.
Thank you. And I have one last question, and forgive my ignorance because I was not full-time until recently. In the past, my understanding is when members voted, the vote wasn't won by majority of votes cast. Yet my understanding is this vote is based upon a majority of votes cast. Could someone explain to me why that is?
That is correct. An annual meeting of the membership needs a quorum of 33%. If a quorum is met, the voting membership is, if it's 50 plus 1 of the voting membership at that meeting. So just a one comment about the policy. You are correct in saying that we do not have a written policy in place, but the board plans to, no matter if this vote passes or does not, they plan to go forward and develop a policy for this in the future.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Joe Burkhardt. I live on Gator Bay Court, and I'm a pickleball player. I'd like to first mention about the motion that was made on February 4th. I don't know if you all listened into that meeting, but there was no decision made on which court was going to be taken. It was going to be left up, if the vote passes, it was going to be left up to the tennis pros to figure out which court to be converted. I wanted to talk a little bit about the balance sheet, the income and expense statement on the revenue and the expense side on the tennis and pickleball side. Right now we have $14,000 a year in outside tennis memberships and $79,000 in revenue brought in from the tennis community. Per Art, who is on the sports advisory committee, indicated that he estimated $60,000 of that 79 was for tennis instruction. So we're trying to get a breakdown of what else constitutes the 79,000. On the expense side, of payroll for Art and Pavel is $175,900, and expenses to maintain the court or expenses associated are $43,000. So the program's operating at a minus $123,000. The point we're making is we don't expect the revenue to be altered at all by going from 7 courts to 6 courts. It's going to continue on as is, as was done by a task force set up by Bob DeBester, Gary Grant, and Carl Hecht. Confirmed that they continue on in full operation on 6 courts with little impact. That was also stated on the February 4th board meeting, if you listened in on that. Lastly, I'd like to mention that, this $150 cost is a very inexpensive way to do this now. Pickleball is growing. We're going to be adding courts. It's not an if, it's a when. And if we wait 2 years, it's going to be $400. You've seen the impact of inflation and the rising cost of construction. It's not going to go down. It's going to go up. And you could be looking at a big number. And the last comment, we have 28, we have a survey of 28 communities that we've done throughout Naples, and everyone has a ratio of 1 pickleball court per 150 doors. Heritage Bay, we have 1 pickleball court for 625 doors. So like we did on the HBEP, we did the HBEP to keep up with other communities. Isn't this the same thing? 28 communities, I could show you the data we surveyed. 1 out of 147 to be more precise. We're 1 out of 625. So this is just another enhancement, but it's $150. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sheila Kiliani. I just wanted to say I'm very, very concerned with the noise level of this sport. I don't think that they put these courts in other communities next to residences. We can hear the noise like everywhere in the whole community, and there's only 2 courts. What would it be like when there's 6 courts? Now, that idea of maybe using the maintenance area, maybe that would be a way to mitigate the noise. I do know that on the pickleball courts, they did put up noise mitigation walls or curtains or something. They took them down on one whole side, and that's why the noise travels so far.
We do, as I mentioned earlier, we have the acoustic panels being installed today and tomorrow, so they'll be fully installed. We bought those upon constructing the first 2 courts. And the policy was set that starting May 1st throughout the summer, when during hurricane season, high winds, thunderstorms in the afternoon, and the high heat index, we will take them down from May 1st and then put them back up November 1st. That's been the policy. You are partially correct as well. We did not put them up because we had a project going on with the resurfacing. And when we started to put them back up, they were damaged in some areas and they need to be refurbished and cleaned. So it's taken us longer than we usually do to get them back up. So they are being installed today and tomorrow.
Okay. I'm also concerned, some other members brought up the cost. I do not believe $150 a unit is what it's going to cost. The ongoing costs, I think it's going to increase our dues, a fair amount. And we've had huge increases the last 2 years. The $150 is nothing, but what is it going to cost us going forward? And none of that is in this proposal. It doesn't tell us what would it cost us? What is it going to do to our dues in the future?
It will have an impact on your operating dues and your annual assessment.
Like how much? Our assessment, like just about how much would be nice to be part of the vote. Where people would have that information when they're voting.
My name's Gary Pratcher. I play tennis, I play pickleball, I golf, none of them very well. I want to explore the cost numbers a bit. Matt, we've asked you what it would be ongoing. We've estimated that it would be $485,000 over 5 years. And that's coming from spreadsheets that I believe you prepared. Could you respond to that? And that is just the operating cost, not the excess reserve contributions we need to make as a result of adding 4 courts, which I'll go into next.
A spreadsheet that I prepared, the only spreadsheet that would be is the one that was prepared for the ad hoc committee during that process. I did estimate some reserve funding and some operating dues, but that was making assumptions of adding a staff member. We don't know if that's the case. There's a lot of planning that we would have to do to give you an exact number of how much our operating dues. That's why I keep being vague about it, because it depends on whether we decide to add staff. I can tell you this: we'll need additional staff for maintenance. Whether we need additional staff facilitating programs, that's yet to be determined. Your reserve funds will go up to reserve for more additional pickleball courts. And we just resurfaced the 2 we have now.
So let's drive down a little bit into that. We're building these pickleball courts to make it a more robust pickleball program. And we're expecting to have clinics, and that will require staff members to support this. The estimate is $97,000 a year of ongoing cost for the maintenance and for the staff member to support the more robust pickleball program. $97,000 a year. It also requires a reserve contribution for the new 4 pickleball courts that we're constructing. That estimate is $47,000 a year for the 4 courts that would be added. That's the excess reserve contributions. Matt, these came right from your spreadsheet. Tell me if I'm wrong.
You're losing one hard true tennis court, which
correct
operating costs to maintain a hard true tennis court is more than maintaining a pickleball court. So some of that operating dues do offset maintenance wise.
Right.
As far as reserves go, the cost to the reserve funding for that would be for resurfacing the courts. And we just accomplished that. It was $8,000 to resurface 2 of those courts.
So I'm not asking about the current courts. I'm asking about the 4 new courts.
So you can extrapolate from that.
Every amenity that you add, if it's a capital improvement, you add funds to the excess reserve for reserves, so that when you need to repair it, the reserve fund has the money to pay for it.
Correct.
And according to the spreadsheet that I've seen, for 4 additional pickleball courts, the reserve contribution, not from me, this is from data from RSM out of the spreadsheet that you provided to the sports or the ad hoc committee, was $47,000 a year. So when you add the $47,000 a year and the $97,000 for the operating cost, it's $144,000 a year. But over 5 years, when you add that cost with the $150 per household, it equals $900,000 for this project over 5 years for just the information we know today. It doesn't talk about the contingency of adding parking spots, because we don't know what happens if Collier County says, we're not going to give you the variance. We built the courts, but now you don't get the variance. What do we do? We're already built. What do we do?
They wouldn't let you start the project without the application. But just going back to the reserve funding that you're stating, that amount, that cannot be correct. If, you know, I'd have to go back to my spreadsheet, but I don't think that's what it was referring to. Because if we just resurfaced the courts and it was $8,000 to do 2, if you extrapolate from that, it wouldn't be $49,000 a year.
Here's the spreadsheet right here.
Like I said, it would have an impact on your dues and your reserve funding.
Okay, so from my estimate, and this isn't to hang you out to dry or anything.
In 3 minutes.
That's not the intention. But it would be $115 a door ongoing every year.
All right, somebody that hasn't gone yet. Over here,
Hi.
Catherine.
I'm Judy Kessler. I live on Gator Bay Court, and I just want to clarify things everybody's bringing up about the green space and possibly building pickleball courts in other places. But it sounded from the information that you provided earlier that that was not an option, that those areas are not buildable, and that we can't have the pickleball courts on that. Is that correct? When they talked about the maintenance area, they talked about other green spaces in Heritage Bay.
I didn't hear the first part of your questions.
In the beginning, you talked about how you had done a study to look at green space in Heritage Bay as far as building pickleball courts in a remote or a different area. And they said that the study showed that there was not an area where pickleball courts could be built. Is that correct?
And there has been several attempts to find green space in remote areas of the neighborhood, starting with the first committee the Sports Advisory Committee that started the campaign to build the first 2 pickleball courts. And they came to the same conclusion. The maintenance area that everybody's referring to is the golf course maintenance building and its parking area. And that is not green space. That is a parking area for their employees and their equipment in that area. And the warehouse to house all of the golf course maintenance equipment.
Okay, thank you.
But the other areas throughout the community that are remote, they're either belong to sub-association property, the CDD, or a part of Bonita Bay East, as Mr. Dubas mentioned earlier.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Norge Mastrangelo. I've been at Heritage Bay now since 2008. Love the community, love the people here, and also love pickleball. And from listening to all the comments tonight, it seems to be 3 subjects seem to be coming up. 1 being the money, 2 being the sound, and 3rd, the litigation. Let me address those. First of all, litigation. I Google it, and I can't find 1 lawsuit in Florida. I may be wrong. I Googled it. I couldn't find 1 lawsuit in Florida where a group of people sued a club and won. So I'm not sure where that information is coming from. And if you do go to lawsuit and you fail, you could be responsible for the fees that you incurred on this club. So I would think twice before going into litigation because it could affect you pretty negatively. Second, the sound. I understand that there may be some additional sound, but they're going to put sound barriers up. And I'm sure with the additional courts, we could probably come up with some way of limiting hours on the pickleball courts so it doesn't interfere with the cabana, because having 6 courts, obviously we'll get more time during the day to play. So we could probably mitigate that. And also we might be able to start later if people are concerned about the morning. We'll have 6 courts. As far as the money's concerned, I don't know, I've been here since the beginning, and the only thing that's ever been done to those pickleball courts is paint them once. So I'm not sure what kind of maintenance needs to be done on these courts, because I don't see any maintenance being done. And they don't need it. I'm not complaining, but just the one-time painting. As far as a pickleball pro, we never asked for that. As a community, as pickleball community, we teach ourselves. We bring people out for clinics that doesn't cost the club anything at all. These numbers, and I'm not trying to insult them, but they're ridiculous. They're not even close to the actual cost. It's a one-time assessment. So I think if you look at those 3 things, you can tear them apart pretty easily. What you need to do, and I think Mr. Lothrop said it best, for the best thing for the community is to do this. We need to keep up. It's terrible that we have 1 pickleball court for 600 members. It's not even close to everyone else. I did have a speech to give, but after hearing everyone else, I'll stop that. But think about those 3 things, and hopefully you'll vote for the courts and keep us up to speed with the rest of the communities.
Thank you.
Go on that side, come back to this side.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Don Flatt. I've been a member at Heritage Bay since 2009. Okay, I play tennis, golf, and pickleball. And I just want to say from the beginning, we don't, as pickleball players or pickleball group, we don't want this to be a battle between tennis and pickleball. We think it's a win-win for the community. So it's unfortunate we're at this juncture in the community where we're looking at tennis sort of versus pickleball, but that's not the case. You know, we really ought to look at the big picture. I mean, this is something that's going to benefit all of us. You know, in the long term, values are going to go up. You know, I think it's a good thing. I mean, I have a little bit here on utilization. I know it's an issue. People talk about, you know, can we give up a tennis court? You know, there's been information provided at board meetings that indicate we can give up a tennis court. It'll continue. The program will continue with 6 courts. Some of that data is, you know, 40% utilization for the tennis courts. That includes league play. League play is maybe 11, 12%. If you take that off, really, you're only getting about 30% utilization for the tennis courts. Now, tennis can continue. I mean, there's nothing going to be impacted in the long term. You know, I think we got to look at what's happened on the golf course. Years ago, we had outside memberships for golf. We discontinued it because the demand for golf exceeded the capacity we had for tee times. Right now, we still sell outside memberships for tennis. To me, that would suggest we have excess capacity. Why would we let outside members come in and use our amenity that we pay $7,000 a year for? They come in and pay a fraction of that to play on our courts. So I think there's a number of things that would suggest that we have excess capacity in tennis. I was on the ad hoc committee. We met last May. We looked at all the data and information. The tennis players on the ad hoc committee said, you're going to kill the tennis program. Well, that was last May, and here we are 10 months later, and nobody's presented anything to indicate the program is going to be killed. Nothing from the tennis side to show us that they cannot survive with 6 courts. So they've had lots of time to put that together, and nothing's been presented. I'd just like to comment quickly on the reserves, the operating costs. I was down to Pelican Marsh yesterday, a couple of days ago, talked to the guy. I mean, he told us they converted a tennis court into pickleball courts. The cost of operating the pickleball courts is nothing compared to maintaining tennis courts. So we give up tennis court and you have pickleball courts, it's going to cost us less. This reserve of 48,000, if it's 8,000 every 5 years, that's what, $1,600 a year reserve. So thanks very much for your time.
Hi, my name's Kathy Nicosia, and I'm a new member in Heritage Bay. I prefer to read this because I really don't like public speaking, but I'm only here because I feel that a lot is at stake. And it's not as simple as just taking away a tennis court and adding a few pickleball courts. My husband and I are new owners in the terrace condos. We purchased our condos after extensive research of the tennis and golf communities in Southwest Florida. Okay, we looked online and visited many communities in person. Heritage Bay quickly became our #1 choice. Aside from it being beautiful and well manicured, the tennis center and its 7 courts was one of the main things that attracted us. Being an avid tennis player from New York and being an active member of the Collier Tennis Association as well as USTA, I know how important it was to purchase here versus other clubs. In fact, some of my Long Island friends who live in South Naples have come to our club for its tennis clinics and competitive matches. They were all very impressed by our tennis center. There are also many members from other clubs that come for our clinics, which I'm sure generate a lot of revenue, which helps keep our membership fees low. Having played here over the last few weeks and attended many clinics, I couldn't be happier with our choice. There's a reason we are so well known for our tennis community. It's a well-run club with activities for all levels from beginners to advanced. We host many team matches from all over Naples, while still having enough courts for our clinics and our members to play as well. Our tennis center is a major amenity of this club and the reason we purchased here. It's an asset to our community, and decreasing its size would be a big mistake. Most people come to Florida for tennis and golf, especially those coming to a non-age restricted community like ours. Having 7 courts is more attractive to future potential buyers. I would personally be very disappointed if we took a court away, since that was a major factor in our decision to choose Heritage Bay. There was one thing that I know one of the gentlemen had said, that he researched the USTA stat for member versus non. Myself, as well as many other people, might still be listed in USTA as having New York or wherever they're from, that you're not including in your statistic. And also, some of the costs that are still being debated. I think that you can't neglect the fact that Matt himself said that parking would be an additional $300,000, and I'm sure there's going to be quite a few other expenses that will be incurred. Thanks for your time.
Jim Garrity. I live in Gator Bay. We've been here probably 7 years. I don't play pickleball or tennis, but I would recommend this vote. It seems premature. This sounds like government numbers coming out here. It's hard to know what to believe. So voting on an item like this, I think, is doing a detriment to the program because I think it's premature.
Hi, my name's Harvey Adams. I'm a full-time resident, live here full-time since 2013. There's been a question about court usage. I happened to look at the court usage today. There were a total of 88 people that were scheduled to play today. Of those 88 people, there were 3 that were that I knew of, and I checked with Art, that were outside members. As of today, we have 18 outside members that pay $750 a year as an individual, or $9.75 if it's a couple. Many of these members take multiple clinics and or private lessons every few days. In fact, a couple of my friends that are outside members have paid over $7,000 in a year each for lessons, which is a significant amount of money for our residents. One of the big things that my wife, who is also a tennis player and is the past president of the CCWTA, is that going down to 6 courts, we would no longer be able to host the CCWTA tournaments. There are 3 of them a year. These 3 tournaments generate over $10,000 in court usage fees. And more importantly than the money, there's over 900 women that come into this community to see the tennis play or participate in it. And it's a great advertisement for our community to have these people coming in here and see what wonderful community we have. And then finally, when we bought here, we bought our home. We bought 27 holes of golf. We bought a very beautiful 7 courts of tennis and a really wonderful fitness center. We've gone through the renovations since then. Our place is absolutely gorgeous. The former Cheeky Hut is now a beautiful cabana. I'd hate to see us go downhill from there. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Gene Elwood. Actually a retired 30-year competitive racquetball player. I play neither tennis or pickleball, so I don't have a dog in the fight. The thing that really I find disturbing is that in this beautiful community, reflecting what our good friend Don Flatt said, that something like this should be divisive. I think that's really sad to sit here and listen to that. I would like to see a win-win proposal, and I challenge management to go take another look at the maintenance area where you could put the courts, the noise would not be a problem for Gator Bay. And since everybody, I understand, walks or rides bicycles, I don't know why we would need the additional parking over there. I would encourage you to look at a win-win as opposed to a divisive situation in a community like this. Thank you.
My name is Dana Weeks, and I live on Smokehouse down across from number 1 Green, Pine 1 Green. And if I sit out on my lanai, even with the sound barriers up, I hear pickleball. And I'm not close to the courts. And my first question is going to be, are they the same sound barriers that you're going to put up, or are they improved and better? I'm sorry?
Yes, it's a newer version of them. But they're 1/8 of an inch thick, and it's the same material. But they are 10 feet tall. They're going to cover the entire fence.
And what do they guesstimate as far as reduction in noise?
The disclaimer. Let me go back to the disclaimer. It doesn't give a percentage. It just says a reduced amount.
Is there anybody on this side who hasn't spoke yet?
My name is Bob Pearson from Veranda 8. I'm sorry to see so many people leaving, but I think they've gotten inundated with so much data conflicting one way or another. One gentleman brought up an issue that unfortunately we've gotten so divisive on this subject. How did we get there? We had an ad hoc committee and a board that's presented, and folks, we got it. We got an up or down vote. You either support or you turn down. What was developed to get that up and down vote? They met and had data. They come up with one solution that provided 4 pickleball courts for a pickleball program. And then they went ad nauseum back and forth on, looking at it. Now, what they didn't do was to look at the 2 parties involved. You have pickleballers and you have tennis people. When asked at a board meeting, when they were voting on this resolution, did anybody get together with these 2 groups and try to see if there's a compromise? I was told no. So what we have 10% of our 1,400 doors, 1,200 and some doors, who are very avid pickleball players. You got 10% of the tennis people in our total community who are avid tennis players. We got 80% of the people who are here trying to decide what's the best solution. And the best solution should have been up front. Is there a compromise between the 2 groups? The board has stated that they did due diligence on this program. Due diligence, I'm from a business background, it normally means from mergers and acquisitions. You examine 2 sides of an issue and you try to get something that benefits and achieves a goal. Here, we don't have a goal. You have an up or down. You did not ask the 2 groups involved to have a compromise. Are there compromises? I was told by one director at the meeting that they voted to go forward with this vote. That we have 2 groups, have no way would that ever settle on anything. His opinion was, don't even try. That's what it's going to be. I think we were given up. We were not represented by the board that puts this up or down resolution forward. We're going to be voting that way, and we've heard data today. I believe some of it is very skewed, some of it is very self-serving, but a lot of it is very good. But now we're going to have to vote, and who's going to be a winner? We're going to have one group not very happy, one group very happy, because we did not facilitate going for a compromise on this program. Thank you.
Who hasn't spoke on this side yet? This gentleman right here.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Lisson. I was actually involved in getting the first pickleball courts built. So half of you hate me and some of you like me. So that, that's where I'm coming from. I want to address 2 issues one has been, I think, misrepresented. I'd like to address because I have some background in it. And I'll address the noise question that the lady had. So management did a great job in their bid. In the original courts, the acoustical material is 8.5 feet high. And one of the criteria for making it more soundproof is height. So it makes it harder for the sound to travel over the top. So they've included in their presentation 10-foot acoustical material around the whole pickleball area. All right. They don't list a noise reduction on their bid, but if you want to go to their website, Acoustablock, they have a bunch of studies that they've done at pickleball communities. They've installed there's been hundreds of installs of Acoustifence across the country. And when they've tested pickleball, what happens is 10 feet outside the fence, there's a 50% reduction in noise. And you can go to the website and see that, and you don't take my word for it, okay? The other area that I want to address is these operating costs and the maintenance reserve are way, way out of line. I don't know what the spreadsheet is, but I'll just make a couple comments. The operating expenses, $97,000 for a pro, 5 years, $485,000, all right? To give clinics and lessons and things like that. I'm assuming management is fiscally responsible. So if I said there are 25 certified pickleball instructors I know that come in on a contract basis, give clinics, give lessons, charge the members, no cost to Heritage Bay. I'm assuming your decision is no cost to Heritage Bay, good, $485,000 over 5 years, bad. Okay, so operating expenses are zilch. I don't know where this comes from. I mean, there's a way to do that. As far as court maintenance on pickleball, and this goes no matter what we do, court maintenance on pickleball is minimum. How much did it cost to resurface the 2 courts? $8,500. That's 5 years. That's the average lifespan of 2 courts. Okay, 4 courts, double it, $17,500. Let's say it's $20,000. You have to replace nets a couple times. There is no other maintenance cost. Let's make it $30,000. Inflation over 5 years. That's you can Google it. Don't trust me. Google life expectancy of a tennis court or a pickleball court. They're going to tell you 5 to 7 years. Google the cost. They're going to tell you $4,000 or $5,000. So I just took, that was a magic trick. I took $900,000 and made it $30,000. That's the actual added expense over 5 years.
Hi, my name is Vicki Skopak. We live on Escambia. We are original members of Heritage Bay. We're not as old as you think. My question, Matt, is I always hear this and I've never gotten a real answer. Do we as a club get any of the financial benefits from private lessons and clinics that are done here?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me the percentage?
20% of private lessons and clinics goes to the club.
Okay. And the other 80%?
Goes as commissions to who's teaching, who's instructing.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody that hasn't spoke yet? You got one?
Sure. I'm Daryl Lee. My wife Becky and I have been at Heritage Bay since 2014. The main reason I joined here was for the 27 holes of golf. And so I'm very happy, Bob, that you decided not to take one of those away. At that time, we didn't know about pickleball, and we were finding tennis more physically challenging. About 3 years ago, we were introduced to pickleball at our community in Minnesota and since become avid players. It's hard to dispute the fact that we are woefully short of adequate pickleball courts when you consider the high demand that we have. The round robins are filling up immediately a week ahead of time as soon as the reservation system opens, and multiple people are being waitlisted. As the sport continues to grow and gain popularity, this situation will only become worse. The addition of 4 additional courts here would go not only a long way to satisfy the demand, but also enhance the club's image to the outside world and maintain our Tier 1 status among golf communities in Southwest Florida. A good example of what's happening in the new construction right now in terms of pickleball, look at the Del Webb community just east of us at Ave Maria. When completed, they'll have 2,000 doors and 12 pickleball courts, which is 167 doors per court. As Joe mentioned, we're at 625 doors per court and would be at 208 if the conversion project is completed. The average for 28 communities in the nearby area is 173 doors per court, so it'd still be slightly higher than the average. Yesterday, somebody approached me, said that we were forcing this issue down people's throats. We don't believe this issue is being forced on anyone. There's been a concerted effort by a lot of people to attempt to educate the community, including those folks who don't play tennis or pickleball, about what the current situation is and what are the possible remedies. The board of directors has kindly agreed to bring the matter to a vote of the membership, and thus it's imperative that everyone is knowledgeable about the facts. Bottom line, we want to see the tennis program continue to thrive. As you've been told, the 3-member task force that was appointed by the board, they said it's still possible with 6 courts rather than 7. We also want the pickleball program expanded such that we can accommodate our member demand and also put us on an equal footing with other communities in the area. A yes vote in the upcoming ballot is the only sensible answer to this issue that will continue to challenge our membership if nothing is done, and will only get worse as the demand for the sport continues to grow. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Jean Danielson. My husband, Bob, and I have been seasonal rentals here for the past several years. And today I've been asked to share a letter from a homeowner who's not able to be here. This is a letter from Melissa Barkett. My husband and I purchased our veranda unit in 2020. My husband is a former D1 college golfer, and I am a former D1 tennis player. Therefore, the amenities associated with these respective sports originally helped who sell us on the community. Since our purchase, I have been converted to pickleball and have begun playing tournaments. The wonderful Heritage Bay pickleball community has been very welcoming. With pickleball being the fastest growing sport in the United States, I am concerned about the viability of attracting future residents with only 2 pickleball courts. One of my pickleball partners spent a week with me at our Heritage Bay residence last year at the end of April during the U.S. Open Pickleball Championship in Naples. I was disappointed that we continually had to play at Veterans Community Park on Immokalee because our 2 courts were full. During the same time frame in the morning, there were always several empty tennis courts. As my husband and I approach retirement years and consider spending more than half the year in Naples, we desire to live in a golf community with a vital and active pickleball community. We would love to stay in Heritage Bay as we upsize, but it will be difficult to compete with communities with better pickleball facilities. Converting 1 or more tennis courts to pickleball courts is an easy and cost-effective solution, which will pay off the future as the sport's popularity continues to grow. I hope you will give strong consideration to this nominal investment. Thank you for letting me be her voice.
I don't know I don't know what to talk about, but we'll start with utilization. We have no demand data. Would you agree, Bob? You were on the board, the ad hoc committee. There's no data that shows demand for pickleball or tennis. What we have is a reservation system. And
I think I had explained that previously. Demand is very difficult with tennis bookings in that if you're a tennis player and you want to play at 8 o'clock and all 7 courts are booked, and then you look and I want to play at 10 o'clock and courts are booked. You then say, oh, I don't want to play at 12. So you can't tell that that demand existed because the person didn't
agree. We don't have demand.
So my response is that we have to assume for both tennis and pickleball that the demand exists. You can't quantify it. We can't tell how many people are playing pickleball at the county parks because they're not playing here. But it doesn't mean the demand doesn't exist. So
I agree.
The answer to your question is yes, you cannot quantify demand.
And we can't tell usage. We don't know. So right now we have tennisbookings.com as our data source. And that's a reservation system. That's all it is. You put your name in, you register for a court, you say you're playing doubles or singles, and that's it. There's no system that tracks whether that person is on that court and used the court, correct? There's no data that shows whether the court was actually used for pickleball or tennis. So if you don't have any data that shows whether the court is used, how can you come up with a utilization number? How? It's impossible. We don't have any system that shows this. Now we can make guesses, and some of our guesses might be if a round robin is scheduled and they're full, well, then any round robin, but most of the time the courts are booked 8 to noon. But if there's a round robin in the evening, well, let's make the assumption that that round robin is full too. And if we do that, these round robins appear to be full every time they're scheduled. Now for pickleball, most of the time are round robins to allow people to have more people join and play in the 2 courts that we have. It would be unfair to say that those round robins in the evening are as full as they are during the morning. It's just not the case. So you can't say that we have usage data for the round robins. And so we have no idea, because we don't have systems that tell us whether people are on the court or not. Actually, we do know that people sign up multiple times using their name and then they don't play. And someone else might take their spot, or they may not. This can happen in tennis, it can happen in pickleball. The bottom line is we don't have data that tells us how busy this stuff is. It's all observational. And that's what it is. So if someone looks at the court today, there's a few people out there. On Saturday, I was here at 11 o'clock in the morning. 6 tennis courts were full with doubles players. No one was on the pickleball court. Now, maybe I know that there was a clinic that was going to be held later, and maybe that's where the pickleball players were. This doesn't mean, this is observational data, and it doesn't really express, okay, it does not by any means should be used to project future data. All I'm saying is, if we're going to make a major vote like this in the community, don't you think we should really have usable data?
Just so everyone is aware, the distinction that we're making between demand and utilization. So demand, we don't know, because we don't know who tried to get on a court and couldn't get on a court. Utilization, I disagree very vehemently. We know who's playing when a court is occupied. We know when a court is occupied. I don't know if round robin, if that's full, like neither in tennis nor pickleball. Yeah, I agree. We don't know. But we know the court has been booked for round robin, and that it's not being played on by somebody else. Okay, but if you look at the numbers, the utilizations for tennis and pickleball both, it's very obvious that neither are fully utilized. So it's clear that there's a lot of time on pickleball courts and tennis courts where we have extra capacity. Okay, so I don't know where you were going with that. But to say that it's merely looking around and seeing how many people are on the court, that's not how it happened. That's not how the data that was gathered. Sure.
Can I just make a comment? I think the point Mr. Pratchett was trying to make is you can't guarantee that reservation in tennis bookings, that name actually played that day. And that is a correct statement. Mr. Grant is also correct in saying that we need. And that was part of the process of implementing Chelsea, was to get the demand. It didn't work. So
I disagree. I think Chelsea was put in to allow access to the courts by multiple people. So it would be a fair, equitable way of allowing people to reserve a court time.
that was also a consideration as well. It was twofold. It was to make it equitable amongst the membership to get onto the pickleball courts, to make a reservation, as well as measure the demand data. And unfortunately, that system did not work.
My name is Tom Fish. I'm a full-time resident. It doesn't matter what sport I play. My wife plays tennis, and that's important to me. Golf is important to me. Keeping people happy on a pickleball court isn't happy to me. But I have a little quiz for you today. I want to address this in a different light. What is the commonality among the following? NASCAR, beach volleyball, skateboarding, men's and women's lacrosse and ice hockey, and even rock climbing. Well, the answer to that is over the last 10 to 15 years, each of them declared themselves to be the fastest growing sport in the United States, and maybe internationally as well. Now, I look around Heritage Bay. I do not see any NASCAR, although the Corvette Club would probably love to try that one, because it would interfere with other amenities. People walking in the road, jogging in the road, private carts in the road, cars in the road, etc. It would be interfering with another amenity. Beach volleyball may be interesting because that could bring in some revenue. Unfortunately, we would have to tear out the new amenities of the courts that were built for bocce ball, and the area where more seating and stoves are. You have to rip that up, bring in sand trucks, dump it, maybe build a couple of courts there. The good part would be Paula would have a ball serving Mai Tais, everybody watching Heritage Bay people in their bathing suits playing beach volleyball. But you would be ripping up new amenities. Skateboarding, thank goodness, that never caught on here. Men's and women's lacrosse and ice hockey, you might shake your head at. But who among us doesn't want to give our grandchildren every opportunity to get into a college on a women's ice hockey program, lacrosse program, or their grandsons into a Division I lacrosse program like Duke? The problem is we don't have the space to build these developmental centers here at Heritage Bay. So that one's out. Rock climbing, I won't even get into. Now, if this sounds weird to you, this is how weird it sounds to me. To have to vote, as I said 3 weeks ago, on a proposition to pay an assessment to eliminate a successful amenity. And maybe that's why these items here never showed up at Heritage Bay in the past. I don't deny there's a growing pickleball interest, and it should be addressed. But not at the expense, don't go backward, not at the expense of an established, successful program. That is as weird as this list. Thank you.
The only problem with those 5 sports, Tom, nobody plays them here at Heritage Bay. We're all too old. So it was a funny story, but nobody's playing those sports. So I don't see the relevance in your point. I'd like to ask Gary Grant. He did perform a 2-year court utilization study. And I would really like him to get into the weeds a little bit, because I got a copy of it right here. And it shows that there's a lot of utilization in tennis and pickleball, but the demand for pickleball utilization is so much higher. So Gary, can you enlighten us a little bit about your 2-year utilization study that you compiled?
Mr. Grant, I'd like you to make it clear that it's not your capacity as a board member that you're presenting. That is true. It has not. No, in this meeting will go on for another hour and a half as well if we went down that road. So,
well, the point I think was true or not? Was Mr. Grant, Mr. Heck, and Mr. Dubas part of a task force to study this?
No, they were not.
So when he tried to present this during a board meeting, why was it not allowed to be shown?
For that reason, they were a task force appointed by the board to assess whether the Chelsea reservation system was was working correctly, and the data gathering process was working with the implementation of Chelsea.
So
and they had made a decision that it was not.
So he compiled this on his own. So is there a question to its validity if he compiled it on his own? So why can't he share it or talk about it?
No, he did not. Yeah, no, we're not going to present the data and figures. This meeting would last all night.
And I'll just qualify that our subcommittee's task, our job was to just look at the data to make sure it was valid to use. We weren't meant to interpret any data or compile data beyond whether the Chelsea system was going to meet the needs of the community. That was it. And that's why Gary's data wasn't allowed to be expanded during the meeting, because it was beyond the scope of what we were doing. I'm not saying it isn't interesting data, but it wasn't in the scope of the subcommittee to get that far down the funnel into the detail. And that's why it was stopped.
Are there any more comments that aren't based off the data?
Not on the data, no. My name is Lou Nicosia. I'm a new resident. My prior profession, I worked for a developer. I was an executive at a developer. And it seems like a lot of bright people in this room putting out a lot of numbers. But for some reason, a small group of people has got us to be, we're a prisoner of only 2 ideas. There has to be other solutions. I've been by that building. I don't play. There's no doubt you can fit 2 courts in there without knocking a thing down but some trees and that little dirt parking lot in front. And as far as the other place towards the rear, I don't even know what a maintenance center is. I couldn't find it on a map. But if that's a viability, we should have multiple choices. To be a prisoner of 2 ideas is pitting a lot of the residents against each other. And I'm sure the people who are on that board thought they were doing the right thing by whittling it down. But we're all adults. We're all smart enough to figure it out on our own. Give us multiple choices. There has to be choices that does not hurt one group to help another group or just get people at each other's throats. It's really a bad way to do business. Thank you.
I'm sorry. My name is Bobby Kavanaugh. I've been here 4 years only. I am a golfer. I don't play tennis. I don't play racquetball. I don't play pickleball. I don't do any of those things. And I came here because one group or another is asking me to support them. So I'm asking you, of the residents here, the 1,200 doors, how many are pickleball players?
I can tell you that we have active in tennisbookings.com. We have a little over 500 active players.
500 pickleball.
Just racket sports.
Just
tennis and pickleball combined.
And there are 1,200 doors.
1,250 doors.
1,250 doors. So that still doesn't tell me the difference between pickleball and
because it
tennis.
Doesn't give them a designation in tennis bookings. It doesn't identify them as either pickleball or tennis. They both use the same reservation system, and there are a little over 500 active players in tennis bookings.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Charlie Kessler again. Mine, no comment, just 2 questions, actually 3 questions. If you can help me with this USTA, dig through that to make sure it's accurate information, whether the person is here or it's away, so we can really determine member, non-member? No, but I'm saying, yeah. Right, so if you would be willing to help me dig in that, I can get cleaner and more accurate numbers. And same with anyone that's a CCWTA. If they can help me, then I can really determine and have accurate information as to, in the leagues, who is truly a non-member, maybe not just a different address versus a member. Secondly, the information Gary talks about the spreadsheet, is that public information?
No, it is not. I don't know.
So how is he privy to that no one else is?
I don't know what spreadsheet that was derived from. It could have been a worksheet that we were working on
But
as
it's
a management
not
team. I'm not
public
sure.
information that any member can see.
No, it's not part of official.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure because I've never seen that, never even heard it was available. Thank you.
Does anybody have anything new or anyone new want to comment on anything that hasn't made a comment yet? Mr. Murray, go ahead.
It's a question for you. And I understand the gentleman's comment about the fact that we're not decided yet where we're going to build the courts. What do you think is going to happen to court 6 if it goes on court 5?
It will not be utilized as much as it is now. It would go.
So we're not just looking at the loss of one court. We're looking at the loss of potentially 2 courts. And okay, so let's build it on the stadium court, right? Because that's an alternative that we have to consider. Can you imagine what it's going to look like on stadium court? The aesthetics are going to be awful. The congestion is going to be awful. All the people that congregate today for tennis are outside the tennis area. It's busy as it is. Now we're going to come to a tennis area which is going to have a 10-foot wall for the pickleball courts. It's going to look awful. And we're going to have all the folks from pickleball there as well, which is just going to create lots of congestion. And so we're potentially looking at a loss of 2 courts or looking at an option to put 4 courts on stadium court where the aesthetics would be awful and the congestion would be awful. I think we need to think this out better. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the town hall.
Oh, I got one more. I got the microphone, so I want to keep it. You're asking us to vote on an issue that we don't know what it cost. You didn't say what it cost. You don't know what the annual fees are. If we have 6 pickleball and we have 6 tennis, you tell me that we're going to have 2, a pro and assistant pro, and the pickleball said, well, that's fine. We don't need that. They're certainly going to want that as well. There's costs we're not hearing. You're asking us to vote on something that we don't see a plan. We're hearing court 5 as a rumor. Very well could be stadium court. How can we vote on something that you're not supplying a plan?
As I said,
we hold it. I'm talking. Don't take my 3 minutes. Okay, you can talk after me. Okay. Okay, go ahead and respond.
Go ahead, finish.
Okay. I threw out the maintenance of facility things. I've been looking at that for a long time. I expected an answer out of you that would have said, well, we looked into that. We couldn't because of this. There is a bathroom there. There's parking there. And there's probably a lot of room you can readjust that maintenance. There's a big area there that you can push that pickleball, push a pickleball in to have a nice remote area that the sound's not going to affect Gator Bay and Escambia. The 10-foot high blankets aren't going to be an aesthetic nuisance. And there's parking there, and we don't have to take a chance of having extra people park at the main parking lot. One more comment. I don't think people understand the size of the facility we have or the tennis program that we have. I'm a tennis player. The only rival tennis facility in the area up and down Immokalee would be the Strand. No other community has the big program that we have, and that's why we came here. Why is there any logic to say, well, 6 is as good as 7, you can get it by? We are deteriorating an amenity we have when there's other choices that we didn't explore. We did not do studies on sound. We did not get updated prices on construction, and we're still wavering on this parking issue. And even if we can get a variance,
I hope that golf members know who park in that parking lot, and it's very difficult. It's going to be more when there's more density from the extra pickleball courts. I hope everyone's considering that, because I have seen no impact study. I'm a developer. I expect to see those things. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. But let me just respond. One, I'm not asking you to do this. Two, the sites that were explored and inspected were member committees from 2012 or 2013 and 14 to build the first 2 courts, and then again with the ad hoc committee this past summer. They explored these areas. I'm not going to tell you that the golf course maintenance area is a viable place to build pickleball courts, because we have a golf course maintenance operation there. And I can't sit here and tell you that we can use that area for that, when we use it right now to house our golf course maintenance equipment to take care of our 27 holes of golf. And the parking there is for their employees and the extra equipment that won't fit in the undersized building they have there. And 2, the operational costs that were stated at this meeting aren't, we were workshopping over the summer. I don't think they are correct. I have to go back and look at spreadsheets that we were doing back and forth with the ad hoc committee. But part of those projections were considering extra staff. I'm not saying that we need extra staff there. That's why I'm being vague on the operational costs going forward, because we don't even know if we're going to have an extra 4 pickleball courts going forward. So the vote hasn't passed yet. So once we understand that, we can determine the extra operational costs. I can tell you the maintenance costs and the reserve funding for it. And it's not as much as was stated at this meeting. But as far as extra staffing and things of that nature, those decisions haven't been made yet. We can project based off of the HBEP. We never gave a number during that process. We made the statement that your operational costs and your annual dues will be increased due to this expansion. And as I stated earlier, any expansion of an amenity will have a cost to it through your annual assessment. Again, I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm asking you to vote on it.
Is there anyone in the room that does not play pickleball or tennis? Could you raise your hand? I would invite any of you to visit with any number of people here. It could be even a tennis player, and let's all sit around the old campfire and look at the tennisbookings.com. You can look at today, tomorrow, every day, as far out as it goes, which is 7 days, and you'll see for yourselves how much more busy the pickleball courts. It's undeniable. I'm not even going to get into the spreadsheets. Just go visit. If you come for lunch and stay for a stroll, okay? If you walk around those courts after 1 o'clock any day in the next 7 days, it'll pop out even if you're blind. And I'm not trying to be cruel, but let's be realistic, okay? You could shoot a cannon off. In fact, Don Flatt, please stand up. Don, who spoke earlier, said he plays tennis, but he's advocating for pickleball. He's playing tennis on Friday. Why? Because there's 7 courts. There's only 1 tennis court being used between 1 o'clock and 9 o'clock on Friday. All right? Sunday mornings, set your clock. At 8 o'clock Sunday mornings,
There's a small army of pickleball people racing to book time to play at 8 o'clock the following Sunday. Look at the schedules and you will see, like clockwork, the tennis people can sleep in. They don't need to book time until 9 o'clock. They could book 9 to 11. Every tennis court is booked 9 to 11 every Sunday. Every Sunday. No, they're booked. Check again, please. 9 to 11 every Sunday. One of the 7 courts gets booked twice from 11 to 1. After that, shoot a cannon off. Okay? So we're not, if the tennis courts were booked 80% of the time, the tennis people would have zero point in trying to convert a fraction of the excess capacity. But let's be real here. If you can't be an honest broker about this, you have no business trying to influence anybody that doesn't play either. I would invite anybody here that doesn't play either to join anybody that could pull up their phone and their iPad, and we will show you, or you can walk over at 1 o'clock every day and see the same thing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call this. It's still happy hour. The grill room is open. Drinks will be flowing. I bet there's some thirsty people here. Thank you, everyone.